Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep underground way past the ancient roots of olive trees, beneath the bones of forgotten warriors, and through a doorway carved in obsidian. You're standing at the entrance to the Underworld's Shoe Annex. Yes, that's what you've stumbled into. There's no grand throne here, no chariots pulled by skeletal stallions. Just Hades, god of the dead, sitting cross-legged on a dusty stone floor, frantically tossing sandals over his shoulder like a department store clearance monster. You probably won't survive this. See, the thing no one tells you is that Hades has a serious footwear problem. Thousands, maybe millions of shoes line the labyrinthine walls of this cluttered cavern. Leather, straw, gold-threaded, wooden, cursed, blessed, enchanted to whisper bad advice. They're all here, piled in lazy chaos, and one pair his favorite has gone missing. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time you're listening from. I love knowing who's wandering these mythic corners with me. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge behind Hades as he kicks over a basket of winged slippers. A slight smell of leather oil and regret rises into the cool air. His silver hair is frazzled, and there's a sandal stuck to one horn of his ceremonial crown. They were right here, he mutters. Two left sandals. Same pair. Impossible to misplace. You consider pointing out that labeling two left sandals as a pair might have been the first issue. But Hades isn't in the mood for logic, or jokes, or anyone really. According to mainstream records from the Homeric epics, the parts that didn't get cut for being too absurd, the gods had little use for mortal accessories. Yet the truth buried in fringe scrolls and whispered by drunk historians at symposiums is that Hades hoarded shoes like forbidden dreams. In the corner, a pair of boots embroidered with minotaur horns yells, "Thief." Every time you look at them, you back away slowly. Ignore those, Hades says. They just miss Daedalus. There's dust everywhere, broken laces, tiny clay tablets labeled in linear B that say things like "do not touch," "emotionally cursed," or "belongs to Karen," "may bite." You step over a velvet slipper, leaking red sand, and reach the back wall, an archway made of polished bones and gilded soles. It hums softly. Hades presses his palm to it and sighs. This leads into the original labyrinth. You blink. The one with the Minotaur. The one Daedalus built and never really finished, he says, brushing cobwebs off a pair of wooden Geta sandals. Historians still argue whether it was a prison, a maze, or an extremely dysfunctional walk-in closet. You follow him in. The air changes. It smells of cedar and dried sweat. The walls tighten and twist. The corridors too narrow for two people to walk side by side. The floor creaks underfoot, though there's no wood, only stone, and something softer underneath, like old rope. You realize it's braided shoelaces. Somewhere, a distant clanging echoes, maybe a dropped clog, maybe a scream. A ghostly voice mutters, "Left sock first, or the whole journey's doomed." You check your feet just in case. Hades pauses at a junction marked with a bronze plaque that reads, "Sandal Storage, year 430 BCE to 429 BCE. Do not reorganize." He frowns. These were organized by trauma. Now they're all chronological. You brush a cobweb off a pair of baby booties made of snake leather. They twitch. You quickly put them down. "I built this annex after the War of Ten Zaryuzan toes," Hades says. You stare. Oh, mortals didn't notice. It was divine politics. Minor feud. Hera banned open-toed footwear at family gatherings, and it escalated into sandal sabotage. You had to be there. You move on. Deeper. The shoes become less recognizable. Some spiral into impossible designs, like Mobius loops for your ankles, or sandals that require a degree in philosophy to unbuckle. There's a boot with the word "don't" burned into it. Just that. Every once in a while, a whisper trails through the halls. This way. No. That way. No. Like someone lost their compass and their moral center. A fraying map is nailed to the wall. It's a child's sketch of the labyrinth, annotated in crayon with angry corrections. You recognize Medusa's handwriting in glitter ink. A marble bust of Hermes sits beside it. Someone has drawn socks on his feet in charcoal. Hades grunts. He always thought shoes were beneath him, even the flying ones. You reach a chamber entirely filled with platform sandals. Each pair has its own shelf and spotlight. A dusty label reads, "Too much. Maybe. Still fabulous." Suddenly, Hades stops. He crouches in front of a cracked sandal with ivy detailing and a small bronze buckle shaped like a lion's head. He touches it like it's a relic. This was the first one, the prototype. Handmade in Delphi, the arch support was divine. You hear the reverence in his voice. Why does it matter? You ask softly. They're just shoes. He turns, eyes dark like volcanic ash. They're not just shoes. They remember where you've been, who you danced with, who you ran from. Silence settles over the chamber. Somewhere far off, a sandal squeaks. You realize you're no longer in a labyrinth of stone, but a museum of memory. A place where every strap and soul holds grief, absurdity, and the slow, quiet weight of walking through centuries in someone else's steps. You take a deep breath. The next room beckons. You step lightly into the next chamber, where the air smells like dusted leather, pine resin, and old theater curtains. In the flickering lamplight, the walls widen into something halfway between a banquet hall and a high-end shoe boutique that's lost its mind. At the center is a pedestal, and on that pedestal, a toe ring. Not just any toe ring, a golden one, with a swirling labyrinth carved into the tiny surface. Hades approaches it reverently, lifting it with 2 fingers like it might bite. Theseus left this behind, he mutters. After the Minotaur thing, right? That thing. The whole sneaking into a monster's lair, guided by thread. Stab and escape classic. You've heard, it told dozens of ways, mostly in school or on poorly funded documentaries hosted by people who pronounce Minoan like it rhymes with cinnamon. But this version, well, apparently it involved significantly more footwear drama. According to Hades, the Minotaur wasn't even the worst part of the labyrinth. The real terror, he says, gesturing to a corridor lined with clawed sandals and half-melted boots, was Daedalus's shoe policy. You stare down a pair of wooden platforms with what looks like retractable talons. Hades nods. He was experimenting with stealth sandals. To walk silently over hay didn't work. Gored 2 guards by accident. The story goes that Theseus arrived in Crete with swagger, zero plan, and a questionable man bun. Ariadne, daughter of King Minos, fell for him instantly, not because he was brave, or handsome, or smart, but because he was the only visitor wearing socks with his sandals. It was bold. Hades says, it said, "I don't care about your island fashion." She respected that. So when it came time to send Theseus into the labyrinth, Ariadne handed him her golden shoelace, not thread, a shoelace, woven from hair, sunlight, and a bit of leftover pomegranate wine. Strong, flexible, and enchanted to always point away from danger except during Mercury retrograde, which made it loop wildly and get tangled in doorknobs. Historians still argue whether the thread of the Theseus myth was ever thread at all, or just another example of poetic shoe washing. You walk along the corridor as Hades narrates like a distracted museum docent. Theseus tied the lace around his ankle, walked backwards through the maze, humming a song about cheese. That's how he avoided the Minotaur. Wait, you interrupt? Why cheese? No one knows, Hades says with a shrug. Some say it was a bribe for the beast. Others believe the labyrinth amplified sound, and that particular melody disoriented the creature. There's also a theory the Minotaur was lactose intolerant. You pass by a pair of sandals shaped like seashells. Next to them is a plaque, worn once by Poseidon, lost during interpretive dance. A fringe tidbit from an early Cretan vase suggests that Ariadne's shoelace wasn't just a tool, but a message. The twist of its golden fibers allegedly spelled out the phrase, "I want out," 2 in a secret script now lost to history. She didn't just want Theseus to survive, she wanted an exit. But Theseus, as you may recall, took the shoelace, slayed the Minotaur, bailed on Ariadne at the next port, and then, according to Hades, promptly stepped into wet cement in Corinth and ruined the lace forever. So much for enchanted footwear. Don't feel bad for him. Hades adds, he later tried to kidnap Persephone, got stuck in a chair, lost circulation in both legs. Classic hero arc. You duck under a swinging sandal. Why its swinging is unclear, and find a table of cracked open scrolls. One of them features a sketch of Ariadne holding a shopping bag labeled Cretan Kicks, while dragging a man into a maze with a leash made entirely of laces. That's definitely not how they taught it in school. You whisper. Hades snorts. Mortals always romanticize. But trust me, most mythical quests are just badly planned errands. As you wander deeper, you start noticing that each pair of shoes has a faint, pulsing glow. Not bright, just enough to notice when you stop moving. They hum softly, like low thunder or forgotten arguments. Some whisper names, others hum sea shanties or mumble tax advice. The toe ring begins vibrating in Hades' hand. He places it on a pedestal marked "Do Not Wear." You look down at your own feet. Your shoes very modern. Slightly scuffed sneakers now feel wildly underdressed. The laces twitch. Just once, just enough. Behind you, a door creaks open. Beyond it, you hear a faint rhythm, like someone dancing barefoot on old marble. Come on, Hades says. That sound, that's Persephone. She's reorganizing. You pause. Is this the part where the labyrinth gets weird? He looks at you like it's always been weird. Then he says, very seriously, do not touch the floral crocs. The corridor tilts slightly as you step through the next archway. It's subtle at first, just enough to shift your balance, make you question your step. Then you notice the floor beneath your feet isn't stone anymore. It's foam. No, not quite. It's soft, springy, with a slight glittery sheen. Welcome to Persephone's closet. This isn't a room, it's a mood. The scent of crushed rose petals and citrus peels floats through the air. Walls made of polished obsidian shimmer with shifting reflections. Half shoe rack, half memory loop. In the middle of it all stands Persephone, barefoot, wearing a silk robe printed with tiny underworld maps. Her long braid coils like ivy around one shoulder, and she's holding something very pink, a single croc. She looks up, sighs, and drops it into a box labeled Spring Mistakes. You wave politely. She doesn't wave back. She's been reorganizing by emotional season. Hades whispers behind you. Spring equals bold regrets. Autumn, unspoken grief. Summer is all sequins. Winter's just boots and denial. You nod slowly, then pause in front of a section labeled Heels of Doom Aesthetic Only. Persephone finally speaks, and her voice is surprisingly mellow. One of you stepped on my grape-colored espadrilles last century. I haven't forgiven it yet. You gulp, hoping she's not referring to you in some reincarnated form. She moves to a velvet-lined cabinet and opens it with a hiss of cold air. Inside are 8 rows of shoes, all pristine, all seemingly identical. Pale pink crocs. The sacred pomegranate stain on the left side of each one sets them apart. The moment I touch that fruit, she says, almost wistfully. These arrived, delivered by Hermes himself. No explanation. Just, congratulations on your binding marital obligation and a fruit basket. You blink. So, magical wedding shoes. More like eternal reminder footwear. She mutters, they squeak when I lie. Hades thought it was hilarious. Hades, notably, takes a sudden interest in a nearby shoelace tapestry. One of the crocs falls off the shelf, lands on the floor, and lets out a wet little honk. You try not to laugh. Persephone rolls her eyes. Historians still argue whether crocs existed in ancient Greece or if they spontaneously appeared in every timeline as a cosmic joke. Either way, these are cursed. They won't stop returning. You back away slowly. To your left, a display glows faintly. You wander toward it and see something wild. A sandal made of glass petals, one of which flickers between real and illusion. Beside it is a small inscription burned into the wood. Worn once to a festival of shadows, caused one deity to confess feelings dangerous. You squint at the handwriting. It's too neat to be Hades, too emotional to be Hermes. Probably Persephone's. You wonder who the confession was meant for. In the far corner, an entire wall collapses forward to reveal dramatically a circular platform where shoes hover in midair. Seasonal rotation shelf. Persephone explains, the last time it broke, Medusa's entire loafer collection fused into a snake. A pair of boots at the bottom row lets out a breathy growl. You step back, accidentally bumping into a small side table holding a delicate silver slipper. Oh no, Hades mutters behind you. You reach to steady it, but it's too late. The slipper slides from the table and shatters on the floor like spun sugar. The room goes completely still. Persephone tilts her head. That, she says slowly, was the slipper that told me when winter was ending. You freeze. I'm so sorry. No, she says. It's fine. I hated how it smelled anyway. A pause. Then she laughs like wind through dry leaves. And the spell breaks. She flicks her fingers, and the pieces levitate back together, forming an even shinier slipper with a red glow heel. Limited edition now. She smirks. You exhale. Hades walks over to a shelf labeled Soul Contracts, legally binding footwear. He picks up a pair of velvet loafers stitched with gold thread and size. I wore these during the first mortal petition for eternal rest. Spilled ambrosia on them. Ruined the instep. Why did you keep them? You ask. He shrugs. Regret looks better in velvet. A fringe myth carved into one of the obsidian shelves claims Persephone once tried to escape the underworld using a pair of enchanted running shoes gifted by Demeter, who believed cardio could cure divine entrapment. They didn't work. Instead, they ran in circles until the soles caught fire. Burnt into the carpet is a small circular track. Persephone points at it. They're still running. In some other layer of time, you glance around. Is anything in this closet not cursed? She considers it. The flip-flops probably aren't, but they attract ghosts with boundary issues. Hades looks at you with sudden intensity. We need to move on. If we stay in here too long, we'll start organizing things emotionally. And that's how you end up alphabetizing your exes by perfume. You follow him toward another spiral staircase hidden behind a curtain made of unwound sandal straps. As you leave, you swear one of the crocs turns to watch you go. Just a little. The spiral staircase creaks beneath your feet, like it's deciding whether or not to let you through. Each step feels slightly different. One squishy, one too hard, one that somehow makes a sound like a duck with a sinus infection. Hades doesn't explain. He just mutters, left, left, skip the 6, and vanishes into the gloom below. You follow. At the bottom, you emerge into a narrow corridor lit by flickering torches embedded into the heels of giant bronze boots. There's a low hum, almost like the hallway is humming a tune. And it takes a moment before you realize it's the sound of someone arguing, passionately, about arch support. As you round the corner, there he is, Hermes, wings on his heels, arms flailing, voice echoing down a half-collapsed marble hallway. These are not knockoffs. He huffs, holding up a glimmering silver sandal with feathers stuck on like a kindergarten craft project. They are artisanally duplicated originals. Hades rolls his eyes. You made those in a dream and woke up convinced they were a prototype. They were gifted to me by Nike herself. Hermes protests, right? Hades replies, in the same dream where Zeus owed you $10 and gave you Crete. You try not to laugh. Hermes turns to you. You, mortal, witness. Tell them you've heard of my winged sandals. You nod quickly. Of course you've heard of them, everyone has. Mainstream Myth 101. The messenger god, flying across oceans, bringing divine mail and unpaid curses. The sandals were legendary, even featured on a commemorative amphora that historians still argue may have been a satirical piece. The wings, though, that's where things get tricky. Fringe theories abound. Some say the wings were literal feathers blessed by wind nymphs. Others insist they were aerodynamic leather flaps borrowed from a forgotten Spartan glider prototype. One scroll, discovered under a collapsed bathhouse in Boeotia, even suggests the original sandals buzzed when you lied, sort of a divine Fitbit. Hermes tosses you one of the sandals. It's surprisingly light, warm to the touch, and definitely humming. This pair, he says proudly, was designed for speed. Custom lacing, breathable leather, self-polishing in the rain. You turn it over. On the bottom is a barely visible inscription, not intended for mountain goats or lawsuits. He winks. You ever try escaping a cyclops wearing those stiff military boots the Spartans wore? Exactly. I made footwear fun again. Hades leans against a column made entirely of stacked flip-flops. You also caused the great missing sandal scandal in 512 BCE. 400 mortals slipped simultaneously because you thought cobblestones were passé. Hermes shrugs. Art demands risk. As the gods continue bickering, you drift into a side room labeled patent-pending prototypes. Do not summon. Inside, Shelves buckle under the weight of footwear experiments gone wrong. A pair of boots tries to walk away when you glance at it. A stiletto twitches like it's dreaming. You find a sandal shaped like a turtle. Just the one. A plaque underneath reads, "Prototype for slow gods. Too successful." You return to the hallway where Hermes has now launched into a defensive monologue about branding. "I invented the swoosh. Not Nike the goddess, Nike the brand. They stole it. Ask any centaur with a podcast." You raise a brow. Centaurs have podcasts, mostly about real estate and canceled quests. Hades mutters. Nearby, a diagram carved into the wall shows the evolution of Hermes' footwear over time: winked, bejeweled, platform, ergonomic, and finally, barefoot. At the very end, a question mark. Historians still debate whether Hermes ever gave up shoes entirely. Hades says some think he evolved past them. Others believe he just lost the last pair during a party and refused to admit it. You pause at a tall silver cabinet. Inside, a single unlaced boot hovers in midair, spinning slowly. Its tongue flickers like it's breathing. "That one," Hermes says solemnly, "was meant to let you walk through lies." "Did it work?" you ask. He frowns. "Too well." Walked straight into Zeus's tax records. "Never again." You glance down the corridor lined with mismatched winged sneakers, feathered ankle wraps, and sandals that seem to hum when you breathe near them. It's like walking through a forgotten music video by the gods, half nostalgia, half cautionary tale. Hermes drifts closer, voice quieter now. "You know why I made them fly?" You shake your head. "Because mortals die slow," he says. "But messages need wings." There's a beat of silence. Even Hades doesn't reply. You move on, your steps echoing softly behind you, your shoes suddenly feeling heavier like they know they can't compete. Behind you, Hermes calls out, "If you find my real pair, tell them I miss them, and that they owe me a prophecy." The corridor tilts again, this time upward, spiraling into an incline paved with mismatched sandals nailed heel to toe like a makeshift mosaic. You grip the walls for balance, your palms brushing against old laces and faded soles that whisper phrases like "wrong way." Don't trust the left boot, and ask about the socks. You reach a landing carved from polished marble, and the first thing you see is a plaque. It reads, "Property of Zeus. No touching, no judging, no laundry." Before you can process that last part, you step into what appears to be a sock vault. Thousands, maybe millions of socks, rolled, bundled, and loosely tied with golden thread, line every visible surface. Sock pyramids, sock columns, sock chandeliers. There's even a sock throne. Though one armrest looks suspiciously chewed, you pause, staring up at a towering display labeled Thunderwear, seasonal collection. And right in the middle of it all, Zeus himself, tall, regal, and deeply annoyed by a mismatched pair of argyle socks clinging to his toga. "Don't just stand there," he says, flinging a cashmere toe sock into the abyss. "Help me find the one with the lightning bolt embroidery. Left foot only." You hesitate. "This is where you keep socks." "Don't be ridiculous." Zeus snaps. "This is where I lose socks." He gestures around. "The Underworld took them." Hades insisted on sock taxation. Hades, from behind you, mutters, "You left them in Tartarus. That's not taxation. That's forgetfulness." Zeus waves it off. Historians still argue whether socks were considered sacred or unspeakably shameful. Either way, no one talks about them, which means they're probably the key to everything. You wander past a pile of mismatched Olympic socks, embroidered with laurels. One whispers, "I saw Heracles cry." A sock on the wall appears to be made entirely of eagle feathers. Another is knitted from what looks like golden fleece. A small sticky note attached says, "Do not wear during full moons or near cows." You hold up a sock with cloud-like padding and something squishy inside. "Is this humming?" Zeus grabs it, sniffs it, and sighs. "That's ambrosia-scented moisture-wicking wool. Hera invented it." It backfired, made everyone fall in love with their own feet. You place it down very slowly. As you drift further into the chamber, you notice shelves labeled with increasingly unhinged tags. Socks of Vengeance. Sock puppets literal. Lightning conductive toes only. Dionysus's party fails. In one glass case, There's a single black sock framed like a relic. It has a hole in the toe and is labeled, "Last worn at the fall of Atlantis." You glance at Zeus, who seems to deflate a little. "I was dancing," he mumbles. "Didn't see the tidal wave." A fringe theory, recorded in a marginal note by a Roman scholar who claimed to be visited by visions of dusty toes, states that socks were once worn only during rituals to prevent divine energy from leaking through the feet. Mortals started copying the trend. By the time of the classical era, socks had become both fashion and blasphemy. And according to one very passionate and very lonely Athenian textile merchant's diary, Zeus began hoarding socks around the same time mortals invented laundry baskets. Coincidence? Probably not. You pause in front of a marble basin filled with damp, mismatched socks floating in what appears to be ambrosia tea. "Don't drink that," Hades warns. Last time, someone did and spoke in riddles for 3 days about toe alignment. A low growl sounds from beneath the floor. Zeus ignores it, pulling open a drawer filled with compression socks. "These helped me conquer Crete," he says proudly. "I had circulation issues." You stifle a laugh. "Respect the sock," Zeus warns, wagging a thunderous finger. "Sandal might take you places, but a sock keeps you together on the way." That almost sounds profound. Almost. Just as you start backing toward the exit, a sudden gust of wind rattles the vault. One of the sock piles trembles. From beneath it, a tiny creature crawls out, skeletal, glowing-eyed, wearing a mismatched pair of knee-highs. The sock imp. Hades groans. "He's still here." The creature glares at you, then whispers in a voice like 1,000 lint balls rubbing together, "I know where the sandal is." You freeze. Zeus raises a brow. Hades leans in, but the imp simply cackles, dives into a sock pile, and vanishes in a puff of foot powder. Well, Hades mutters, "We're not gonna beat that trail. Time to head to Daedalus's archives." As you leave, you glance back at the throne of socks, half expecting it to collapse. But it holds firm, regal and ridiculous, a monument to divine feet and forgotten laundry. And in the middle of it all, Zeus adjusts one sandal and mutters, "Next time I'm bringing sandals with labels." You descend through a narrow passage made entirely of shoehorns welded together, some gold, some rusted, one suspiciously shaped like a banana, and emerge into a chamber unlike any other so far. There are no shoes here. Not at first. Just scrolls. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all cataloged with obsessive precision, bundled into bins marked with years, reigns, lunar phases, and the occasional passive-aggressive sticky note that reads, "Do not reshuffle. Daedalus will know." This is the Labyrinth extension plan room. Hades steps forward and exhales. This is where it started to spiral. You follow him into the first row, where each scroll is labeled with things like expansion proposal, sandal overflow wing, and minotaur noise complaint resolution plan. In the center of the room, there's a large model, a 3D rendering of the labyrinth made entirely from glued-together sandals and bits of thread. It looks like a shoe museum exploded and reassembled itself using duct tape and spite. A nameplate reads, "Daedalus' 8th Draft, the Footwear Compromise." You stare. Why would he keep redesigning it? Daedalus didn't know when to stop. Hades, first it was a maze to trap a monster. Then it was a statement about fate. Then it became this. He gestures around, a glorified storage space for every shoe he ever hoped someone might wear. You pass a display labeled experimental stair sandals. Walk your way to the roof. Each step is a literal sandal attached to a riser. And every few seconds, one of them hiccups. Did anyone use them? You ask. One priest, Hades replies, fell upward for 6 hours. You come across a scroll with burnt edges and the unmistakable scent of goat leather. The title, Sock-Controlled Maze Doors. Phase 2 Testing. The margin features a single furious note. Stop letting the socks think. Historians still argue whether Daedalus ever finished the labyrinth. Hades murmurs, there are maps, floor plans, footprints, but they all contradict each other. Some say it shifts based on your mood. Others claim it responds to what shoes you're wearing. You look down, your sneakers are glowing faintly around the edges. You're kidding, you whisper. Try wearing loafers in here, Hades mutters. The whole place turns into a bank lobby. In the far corner, you find a worn bronze plaque that reads, "This section reserved for unclaimed footwear from the fall of Troy. Caution, still emotionally charged." You step through. The air changes, not colder, exactly, but heavier, like regret, like old promises that still echo. You pass a sandal made of braided horsehair, still stained with something darker than dust. A tag hangs off it, Cassandra's left foot, never collected. Next to it, a broken boot with scorch marks, belonged to an unnamed soldier, whistled when he ran. In one corner, a pair of child-sized shoes, bright red, untouched by time. Hades gently turns them over with a stick. These were Daedalus's, he says, made them for his son. Icarus never got to wear them. A silence blooms between you. You come to a narrow corridor, lit by shoes hung like lanterns, their laces glowing gold. Each one bears a name carved into the sole. Not names of gods, names of mortals. Forgotten, erased, a fringe detail from a lost Orphic hymn once claimed. Daedalus believed every shoe deserved its own destiny, that walking in the right pair could alter fate itself. He built the labyrinth not to trap, but to test. What happens when you walk in someone else's journey? You glance at Hades, who looks unusually quiet. Do you ever walk it? You ask, only when I forget who I'm supposed to be. You stop before a door carved from sandal straps twisted into a knot so tight it hums. Hades places his hand on it. Behind this is the registry. If the lost sandal's anywhere, it's on that list. Is it cursed? You ask. He nods. Obviously, the door unlatches with a soft gasp, like it didn't expect to be touched again. Beyond, the next room pulses with light. And the shoes! They're waiting. You step into the registry room and immediately feel like you've walked into the world's most dangerous DMV. The space is impossibly vast. Endless aisles stretch outward, filled floor to ceiling with clay tablets, dusty scrolls, and glowing parchments, each one inscribed with the full details of a sandal, boot, slipper, or forgotten clog. The shelves buzz faintly, as if whispering to each other about whose laces were last tied too tight, and floating in the center of it all, perfectly balanced on a crystalline pedestal, is a giant stone sandal. One single sandal. It rotates slowly. Glowing runes spiral down its strap like bad decisions. That, Hades says grimly, is the keystone. The first registered Underworld shoe. You blink, you have shoe registration. Obviously, he mutters. How else do we keep track of what's been walked where? Every death march, every cursed journey, every accidentally wandered into Tartarus story. The pedestal hums. Above it, a massive map floats in midair, shaped like a foot. Not a metaphorical foot, a literal, divine left foot made of mist and constellation dust. Each toe lights up with an aisle designation. Broken souls, sandals of war, left behind by lovers. Accidental teleportation. You follow Hades into the row marked registered sandals. Deity class, years, 1100-500 BCE. A breeze rolls through, despite there being no wind. Scrolls rattle. A tablet behind you clears its throat. Hades stops at a cabinet sealed with golden rope and a single, pulsing lock. This is where I last logged them, he mutters, pulling out a jagged key that looks suspiciously like a toenail. You try not to comment. The cabinet opens with a loud sigh, like it's been waiting centuries for this moment. Inside, 3 perfectly preserved sandals, not a pair. 3, 2 rights, 1 left. He stares, you stare. Oh no, he breathes. They've been rotated. You don't know what that means. But from the way the room darkens, you're guessing it's bad. Every few centuries, Hades explains, the registry resets itself. It assigns each shoe a new identity, based on mythic resonance, regional weather, and Mercury's emotional state. Mercury, as in the planet. Mercury, as in Hermes when he's off his meds. You scan a glowing scroll nearby and see Sandal No. 3842B. Type, open toe divine. Owner, unknown. Last worn. During argument about lettuce. Status, reincarnated as boot. You gently close the scroll. I need to find the one I wore during the Treaty of River Leith. Hades says, rifling through entries. It had a woven ash sole, obsidian heel, cursed buckle. Perfect for negotiations. You glance up at a nearby sign that reads, treaty footwear. Handle with skepticism. Suddenly, a drawer slams shut on its own. A leather sandal floats into view, spinning slowly, laces fluttering like it's underwater. A ghostly voice rasps, "Return me to aisle 4. Don't listen to it." Hades mutters, "That one belonged to a demigod who walked backward through life. I feel like I'm losing track of time." You say, "That's how you know you're getting closer." You find yourself in front of a registry assistant. Well, what used to be one. It's now a skeleton in a tattered toga, slumped over a tablet labeled "Still Loading." Next to it, a smaller plaque. Cleric Gaius, died waiting for update approval. Beloved archivist, terrible typist. You bow respectfully. A glowing orb flickers overhead and suddenly projects a holographic image, a sandal with a broken strap and a trail of ash leading into a subfolder marked "Unknown Labyrinth Extensions." Hades steps closer. "That's it. That's the one. But it's not in this room." "No," he says. "It's in the spiral wing." You don't like the sound of that. A fringe inscription carved into the base of the registry table claims the spiral wing was designed to house anything the gods didn't want to deal with, including lawsuits, broken dreams, and unfinished sandal pairs. Historians still argue whether the spiral wing physically exists or is simply an idea that forms when you're about to regret a decision. Hades grabs a flickering torch that ignites with blue flame. "We'll need to pass through the Oracle Corridor, and probably the Medusa Ward. Bring the whispering shoe, it likes you." You glance down. A tiny slipper with a rhinestone buckle is nudging your ankle. It whispers, "Don't trust the boots." You pick it up. As the two of you head deeper into the labyrinth, past the official records, past the shelves of unlabeled regrets, and through a growing hum of misfiled footwear, one thing becomes clear. You're not just chasing a lost sandal, you're chasing a story someone wanted to forget, and it's not finished being told. The corridor to the spiral wing doesn't look like a corridor at all. At first glance, it appears to be a hallway-shaped lie. A flickering mirage of tightly bound laces, ghost-threaded curtains, and a faint smell of eucalyptus and guilt. A bronze sign over the arch reads, "The Spiral Wing. Inventory Overflow. Misfiled Realities. Emotional Footwear Storage." Hades pauses before entering, adjusting his cloak like he's bracing for rain or therapy. "Before we go in," he says carefully, "don't look directly at the sandals labeled "Events That Didn't Happen." They might convince you otherwise. You raise an eyebrow. "You're saying there are shoes for fake memories." He nods. "Rewritten myth. Forgotten versions. Like the time Athena briefly claimed she invented the sock. Total nonsense. But she did have a press release." You step inside. It's dim, echoing, and disturbingly warm. Shelves curve inward, looping like a snail shell that decided to become an archive. The deeper you walk, the softer the air feels, thick with scent. A mixture of burnt leather, rosewater, regret, and something you can only describe as last-minute resignation. At the center, a desk made of polished horn and birchroot sits under a floating candle. Atop it rests a massive stone tablet cracked down the middle. The title reads, "Hades Sandal Registry. Disputed Entries." He stares at it for a long moment. "These are the ones the system doesn't recognize." He murmurs, "The shoes that got rewritten, reassigned, or, in a few cases, blamed for things they didn't do." You peer over his shoulder. The entries are eerie. Sandal, black suede, never worn, but remembered. Left boot, oversized, walked across 2 timelines, never apologized. Pair of clogs, mistaken for prophecy, returned unopened. One catches your eye. Sandal with obsidian buckle. Last seen in Medusa's mirror room. Registry halted due to emotional interference. Emotional interference. You ask, means the sandal refused to be remembered. Hades replies, "Some shoes develop resistance, usually after trauma or poetry readings." You continue along a narrow aisle labeled footwear that made things worse. One slipper flickers like static. A sandal buzzes faintly and whispers, "It was the banquet. I swear." On your left, you spot a cracked boot labeled, "Belonged to Orpheus. Refused to move forward." It's turned backward on the shelf, a fringe myth never confirmed, and only scrawled once in wine ink by a sibyl on a bad date claimed that Hades' obsession with shoes wasn't about fashion, but about proof, a way to track decisions, regret, revolt. After all, mortals may lie, but their footprints rarely do. As you pass deeper, the whispering shoe in your hand, remember that rhinestone-buckled slipper starts twitching. Its sole glows with soft violet light, pointing toward a cracked mirror in the wall. Ignore it, Hades mutters. But you don't. You step forward, and the reflection that meets you isn't quite yours. The version of you in the mirror wears different shoes, smoother, shinier. Wrong. They're running shoes, tied tight, running from something. You look back. Hades. But he's already kneeling at the far wall, unlocking a drawer shaped like a sarcophagus. Inside it, a single sandal, worn, frayed, and familiar. That's it. He breathes. My obsidian buckle. The sandal twitches in place. I wore this at the Treaty of River Lethe, he says softly. When we promised never to speak of the erased timelines again, I left it behind as part of the pact. You nod slowly. So why retrieve it now? Hades doesn't answer right away. He reaches into the drawer, brushes dust from the strap, and whispers something too quiet to catch. The sandal shudders. Then, from somewhere nearby, a growl, low, animalistic, ancient. A plaque near the base of the drawer begins to flash. Caution. Retrieval will activate Event Chain Omega. Memory loops and unsolved grievances. I forgot about that part. Hades murmurs. Of course you did. The sandal begins to glow. Suddenly, shelves shake. A door slams open, and a long, echoing bark deep and bone-rattling rings out from the next hall. You glance at Hades. That sounded like Cerberus, he sighs, and he's very protective of my footwear. The bark echoes again closer this time, not one bark. You realize 3. A triple-throated warning. You tighten your grip on the whispering slipper. It's begun trembling, the rhinestone buckle pulsing with panic like a faint heartbeat. Hades doesn't flinch. He carefully tucks the retrieved sandal beneath his cloak and mutters, "We'll have to go through the Oracle corridor." Quickly, you bolt after him as another bark reverberates through the labyrinth, followed by the unmistakable sound of claws skidding across marble. You catch a glimpse just for a moment of Cerberus rounding the far corner. All 3 heads focused, all 3 sets of eyes glowing like lanterns lit by old grudges. As you turn a corner, the air thickens, shimmering with heat and moisture. The Oracle corridor, lined with mosaics and stained glass depictions of ancient predictions, some famous, some clearly mistranslated, and a few that look like rejected horoscopes. This place hums with potential energy. Each step forward feels like a question forming, each breath like the answer retreating. And at the very center of it all, a worn pedestal holding something strange, a single, cracked flip-flop. It's ordinary, plastic, beige, faintly imprinted with the logo of a long-defunct bathhouse, but as Hades steps near, the flip-flop squeaks, once, loudly. Then again and again. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The air vibrates. Hades sighs. This is the flip-flop oracle. You blink. It squeaks out prophecies. It squeaks out tones. He corrects. Interpretation is the hard part. Hermes once claimed it predicted the invention of lasagna. He was probably wrong. The flip-flop squeaks again, louder. Hades listens carefully, then groans. What did it say? You ask. He looks grim. It says Cerberus chewed the sandal. Your blood goes cold. The sandal, the one from the treaty, the obsidian-buckled, historically suppressed footwear of memory loops and unspoken timelines. Squeak. Hades gently kicks the pedestal. Don't be smug. Squeak, squeak. You notice now that the flip-flop has a faint bite mark on the heel. There's even a small tag attached to the strap, as if someone once tried to sell it. Used. Slightly oracular. Returns not accepted. A fringe theory recorded on the back of a papyrus lunch receipt claims the flip-flop was once worn by the Oracle of Delphi during a particularly humid summer. She'd gotten tired of sandals and opted for comfort. The gods were furious. Prophecies grew less dramatic. Some were delivered mid-nap. And yet, this humble footwear remained one of the few relics to survive the collapse of the temple's wardrobe annex. Hades steps aside. Ask it a question. You frown. Seriously, it only works if you're confused and under emotional duress. You hesitate. Then whisper, "Are we going the right way?" The flip-flop squeaks once, long and low. Hades nods. That means yes, probably. Another bark echoes down the corridor, followed by a rhythmic thudding that sounds suspiciously like clawed feet pounding in triplicate. Cerberus is getting closer. The whispering slipper in your hand murmurs, "Left, left." Then, duck. You move left. Hades follows. A torch flickers out behind you. Just ahead, the corridor splits, and at the center of the fork stands a display case holding 3 pairs of shoes. 1 pair of boots with fur lining, 1 pair of toe-pinching dress shoes, and 1 pair of battered flip-flops with faded paint and seaweed still caught in the straps. The Oracle's backups. Hades mutters. You step toward the display. The flip-flops squeak of their own accord. Then, with a pop, the case swings open and the left flip-flop hops out. Just hops, like it has a plan. Follow it, Hades says. Seriously, it's never wrong, unless it's humid. The flip-flop flops down the left-hand corridor with shocking speed, smacking the marble with prophetic confidence. You and Hades race after it, passing walls covered in prophecy graffiti. Do not trust the left toe. Time loops if you wear socks in summer. The sandal you lost is the life you avoided. One particularly ominous mural depicts Cerberus curled around a sandal with glowing eyes. A cracked caption reads, "What cannot be remembered must be chewed." Suddenly, a wall collapses behind you. Cerberus bursts through, massive, terrifying. But wearing on one paw a sandal, the sandal, obsidian buckle and all. It's chewed. Hades groans. Well, that complicates things. You slow to a stop as Cerberus halts a few feet away. One head snarling, one head panting happily, and one head tilting curiously, as if asking, "You dropped this." The whispering slipper in your hand trembles violently. Hades steps forward. "Heel," he commands. All 3 heads tilt. "Down," he says, more sternly. Cerberus licks his middle head's nose. Then he drops the sandal. Chewed. Yes, but not destroyed. Hades lifts it with surprising gentleness, running his fingers over the frayed strap and teeth marks. "Still resonant," he murmurs, "still full of memory." The whispering slipper lets out a contented sigh, and the flip-flop, it squeaks. Twice. Softly. "That means we're on the right track," Hades says. You nod, exhaling. But then, from deeper within the spiral wing, a door groans open, and a smell hits you. Old parchment, wet leather, snake oil, Medusa's closet. The air shifts. It smells like aging perfume and arguments you're not ready to have. Hades slows his pace as you pass under an arched stone doorway lined with polished obsidian scales. The hallway flickers not from light, but from reflections. You catch glimpses of yourself in the wall, not just your face, but other versions of you older, younger, barefoot, running. The plaque overhead reads, "Medusa's Loafer Collection. View at your own emotional risk." You step inside. The room is circular, cold, illuminated only by dozens of freestanding mirrors, angled just enough so you're never sure which direction you're truly facing. The floor is velvet, dark red, like an old theater curtain. Nobody ever dared to clean. And in the center, shoes, dozens of them, loafers, every kind, glossy, matte, snakeskin, crocodile leather, carved obsidian, bronze-toed, some embedded with petrified daisies. Each pair is arranged carefully ritually, even like they're still being watched. Maybe they are. A massive marble bust of Medusa sits against the far wall, her face serene, eyes closed, hair frozen mid-snarl, serpents paused mid-strike, and right beneath her chin, a small sign reads, "Please do not touch the cursed moccasins." Hades groans. I told her not to label them. That just makes them more cursed. You crouch to examine a pair of marbled green and gold loafers. They shimmer when you breathe near them. They're enchanted, Hades explains. Not to petrify you, but to make you remember what you were trying to forget. You stand up quickly. A whisper tickles your ear. Don't leave her. Don't leave. You spin around. No one's there. Historians still argue whether Medusa ever cursed her shoes intentionally. Hades mutters, pacing behind you. Some say she wept into them. Others believe they absorbed too many funeral dirges. You glance at a pair of suede loafers embroidered with vines. A tag reads, "For spring awakenings that never arrived. They smell like rain and absence. I gave her this room," Hades says softly. She needed somewhere to store grief that wouldn't follow her everywhere. You nod. In the far corner, a pair of loafers glow faintly violet. One hovers an inch off the ground. The whispering slipper in your hand reacts immediately, going rigid. "That's the pair," Hades says. "One of them got mixed into my sandal storage during the sock rebellion. Been looking for it ever since." You approach the loafers cautiously. Each has a small inscription on the sole, barely visible. One reads, "I said goodbye." The other, "You never did." You swallow hard. "I shouldn't have left her alone." Hades mutters, "When Persephone was taken, Medusa kept watch, guarded the gates, didn't flinch." But no one wrote that part down. You gently lift one loafer. It's warm, pulsing softly, a heartbeat of memory, of mourning. Suddenly, a sound behind you, high heels on marble. You freeze. Hades freezes. A voice echoes around the chamber, soft, cold, dry as sand. "I told you not to come back." You turn toward the mirror closest to you and see her. Medusa, not stone, not snake, just a woman in a long coat, eyes covered in a veil, loafers on her feet. "Medusa," Hades says calmly, "we're not here to disturb." "You never are," she replies, "and yet you leave dust in your wake." You open your mouth to speak, but she turns toward you slowly, and though her face is veiled, you feel something shift in your chest. Like guilt you didn't know you carried. Like you owe someone an apology you never gave. "The loafers belong to the Labyrinth now," she says. "Every memory left behind becomes another corridor. They're part of my registry." Hades counters. "One was taken by mistake. They always say that," Medusa murmurs. "Men lose things and blame the maze." A tense pause. Then Hades nods and steps back. "It's your call," he says to you. You stare at the loafers, then at Medusa, then down at the whispering slipper, now limp in your hand. It's no longer whispering, just watching. You reach forward and take the left loafer. Medusa tilts her head. "Wrong one." You hesitate. Switch hands. As you pick up the right loafer, a soft hum fills the air, and the room trembles. Dust falls from the ceiling like forgotten snow, and one by one, the mirrors crack, not shatter. Not violently, just a soft line across each one, like a ribbon curling in glass. Medusa turns away. "Go." Before I remember why I turned back, you and Hades leave the chamber in silence. Behind you, the door seals itself with a hiss. "She let us take it." You say quietly, "No." Hades replies, "She let you." You look down at the loafer in your hand. There's a new inscription on the sole. "This path must be walked twice." You're not sure what it means, but the labyrinth ahead darkens, and it's waiting. You move in silence for a while, past halls lined with fossilized shoelaces, past niches where sandals hang like wind chimes. Some rattling warnings, others singing lullabies you swear you once heard in a dream. The loafer in your hand is warm now, comforting. Too comforting. It hums like it remembers you better than you remember yourself. Hades slows as the corridor opens into a wide, sloped chamber with walls carved to look like enormous calves and ankles. You realize you're standing in a kind of anatomical tribute to legs. Giant marble toes frame the entrance to the next room. Above them, a simple inscription, "Achilles' forgotten heel. Insert. Exhibit closed due to philosophical disagreement." You exchange a look with Hades. He shrugs. It's open now. Inside, it's clinical. Cold marble floor, columns shaped like orthopedic supports. In the center, a glass case. Inside it, a small, yellowed insert shaped like the bottom half of a foot. It's thin, with a barely visible winged emblem on the side and what appears to be a faint smudge of blood. "Is that it?" you whisper. Hades nods. "The insert that may have changed everything." You approach slowly. There's a plaque, believed to have belonged to Achilles, may have been discarded due to discomfort or divine oversight, recovered post-Trojan War, wedged between a spear and a bronze bowl of olives. According to mainstream legend, Achilles' mother dipped him in the river Styx to make him immortal. immortal, holding him by the heel. That's why he died from a wound there. That part, everyone knows. But one dusty scroll found wedged in the floorboards of an abandoned Spartan sandal factory suggests something else. That Achilles had heel pain. Chronic, unbearable. And that before battle, he often wore a custom insert padded with fleece, blessed by Apollo, stitched by a mortal with a grudge. The fringe theory. That on the day of his death, Achilles forgot to wear it. You look down at the insert again. It seems insignificant, pathetic even. It's yellowing, cracked, barely holding shape, but something about it radiates disappointment, like it knows what it failed to prevent. Hades crosses his arms. He limped into battle, not because of fate, because of friction. You chuckle. So he wasn't doomed, just poorly supported. You'd be surprised how many heroes are, he replies. He taps the glass. The insert twitches slightly. Historians still argue whether this is real, whether Achilles ever acknowledged his own vulnerability, or whether this was added later. But you know what? What? Hades leans closer. The insert remembers. You scan the surrounding wall. Etched into the stone is an early Greek drawing of Achilles trying to stretch his foot, surrounded by very confused soldiers. Someone added a caption in red ink. "Tell Helen I'll be there after I find my sock." You laugh. Hades doesn't. He looks oddly somber. Immortality, he says, was always about denial and comfort. Achilles wanted to win, but he really wanted to walk without pain. You pause at a second display case nearby, this one broken. The object inside has clearly been stolen. Only the tag remains. Second insert right heel, currently missing. Possibly thrown at a Trojan horse. The whispering slipper in your hand shifts again. A soft phrase escapes it. He stepped wrong on purpose. You freeze. Hades notices. You hold the slipper close. Whisper, "What do you mean?" But it doesn't answer. The air gets colder. Somewhere deeper in the labyrinth, a metallic creak echoes like a gate opening or closing. We should keep moving. Hades says, "Cerberus won't follow us here. Too many Achilles-related puns last time." You nod. As you leave, the heel insert glows faintly behind the glass. A warm amber color, like it remembers being worn, not by a hero, but by a person. You pass under the arch of marble toes, and as you do, a voice etched invisibly into the stone whispers, "You weren't supposed to know that." You step forward anyway. The corridor narrows, not physically, but psychologically. You know the type walls pressing inward without moving. Light growing too quiet, shadows behaving like they've read your diary. Ahead of you, a sign dangles from an unraveling leather strap. Sisyphus and the slippery slipper. Exhibit under complaint review. You glance at Hades. He looks sheepish. "Don't judge," he mutters. "It was a long century." You duck into the next chamber. It's circular. No, elliptical. The room has no true center, only a tilted floor that loops ever so slightly like the inside of a marble cereal bowl. At the apex, frozen mid-slide on a slick obsidian ramp, is a single slipper, red velvet, curved at the toe, still glistening with what might be divine sweat. Sisyphus's slipper. You'd expected a boulder, maybe a chain. But this, Sisyphus escaped once, Hades says flatly, nearly made it out. You blink. I thought he was trapped for eternity. He was, but he found the back corridor, the exit hallway. Built it himself with a spoon made of charm and petty arguments. You stare at the slipper. So what stopped him? That, Hades points at the ramp. A fringe tale, preserved only in the margin of an Etruscan laundry invoice, claims that during one of his many attempts to outwit death, Sisyphus acquired a slipper enchanted to increase traction, supposedly allowing him to climb any incline without slipping. But he wore only one, the left, because the right slipper was delayed in shipping. And so, as the story goes, when he finally reached the halfway point of his forbidden escape ramp, one foot held, but the other skidded violently. Tragically, on an olive oil slick left behind by an accidentally overturned amphora, he fell. The slipper flew off, and the ramp was sealed. Historians still argue whether the slipper's enchantment failed, Hades murmurs, or whether Sisyphus sabotaged himself. You glance at the velvet shape frozen mid-slide. It looks tired, like it's also sick of this story. He kept the slipper polished. Hades continues, treated it like a relic, the same way mortals cling to lucky socks or broken laces. You nod. Hope on one foot. The whispering slipper in your hand twitches again. He didn't want to leave, just wanted to know he could. You let that sit. On the far wall, you spot a bizarre chart drawn on leather, annotated with angry chalk arrows. It maps out Sisyphus's movements across centuries. Attempts, failures, ramp resets. At the bottom, a column labeled Emotional Tread Depth. You squint. Apparently, his slipper wore down most during conversations with Orpheus and least during Tuesdays. Another wall shows carvings of other figures slipping on the same ramp, minor demigods, one curious satyr, and a merchant who thought it was an express escalator. None succeeded. All fell, except there's one name at the very bottom, etched in much smaller letters. Unknown mortal, carried a whispering slipper, turned around halfway. You feel your fingers go cold. Hades notices. That's new, he mutters. That wasn't here before. You stare at the velvet slipper on the ramp. It shudders slightly, as if recognizing you, the loafer in your bag. The one from Medusa's room vibrates softly, pulsing with tension. The two shoes are reacting to each other, recognizing something, a pattern, a loop, a failure that wasn't yours, but still stains your step. You step forward, halfway up the slick obsidian ramp. Your shoes hold. Mostly, just before you reach the slipper, a tiny voice, high-pitched and unmistakably anxious, calls from your hand. Turn around now. You stop. Behind you, the walls pulse once. Just once, the whole room exhales. And then, the slipper lets go. It slides, softly, right into your path. You step back instinctively. Hades catches it mid-fall with practiced ease. No more slipping, he says. You both stand there for a beat. Then he tucks the slipper into his cloak beside the chewed sandal. You really think Sisyphus wanted to escape? You ask quietly. I think, Hades replies. He liked the idea of leaving more than the act of leaving. He gestures toward the exit. Come on, we're almost there. You pass through the narrow archway, shoes silent on ancient marble. Behind you, the ramp shimmers once, then goes still. The whispering slipper rests quietly again. The loafer pulses once more in your bag, as if relieved. And somewhere ahead, just barely audible now, comes the steady rhythm of panting breath and gnawed leather. Cerberus again? You hope not. But this deep in the labyrinth, nothing's behind you for long, especially the things you haven't finished walking through. You walk for what feels like days. Time here doesn't tick. It shuffles. Corridors loop gently, then suddenly jerk left as if offended by your assumptions. The floor beneath your feet changes texture with every few steps. Tiles, gravel, fabric, something that feels unsettlingly like pastry dough. No explanation. Then you see it. A sign, half swallowed by ivy and time. The Underworld Cobblers Union. Local 0,000. Dues unpaid since 923 BCE. The hallway widens into a vaulted workshop filled with empty wooden benches, broken sandals dangling from ceiling beams, and massive scrolls nailed to the walls. It smells like leather, sweat, ambition, and unresolved arbitration. At the far end, a cracked wooden plaque. What is dead may still need insoles. You step in cautiously. It's dead quiet. Ironically, careful. Hades says, they went on strike about 2 centuries ago, claimed they weren't properly revered. Something about ergonomic disrespect. Are they ghosts? You ask. Not quite, he replies. More like unionized impressions of labor. They only show up if they feel collectively ignored. As if on cue, a gust of wind sweeps through the workshop. The sandals on the beams begin to swing. And then, the floorboards creak. Tools rattle, and translucent figures begin to emerge. Not terrifying, not vengeful, just tired. Old cobblers, robes stained with wine and dye, sandal-shaped shadows floating near their hands. One spirit leans over a table and resumes stitching a boot mid-sentence, murmuring about the ethics of divine arch support. Another sharpens a shoehorn with surgical precision, muttering, he wanted spikes. I gave him wisdom. One approaches you. His translucent mustache twitches as he squints at your feet. Factory lacing. He mutters, cheap. You deserve better. Thanks. He nods solemnly. You walk with questions. We repair questions here. Hades steps forward. We're looking for a specific pair. My old ceremonial sandals. Registry shows they were stored here after the collapse of the River Leith file room. The ghost cobbler considers this. Were they emotionally scarred? Yes. Chronologically unstable? Yes. The ghost pauses, then floats toward a long cabinet marked Cursed Footwear, pending legal review. From it, he retrieves a wooden shoebox glowing faintly purple. The lid bears a single carved symbol, a sandal wrapped in vines. Here, he says, but they've changed. He lifts the lid. Inside, a pair of sandals, familiar in shape but warped. One strap curls upward like a question mark. The heel appears to be weeping tiny droplets of ink. These were worn during the last divine summit. Hades murmurs. They soaked in unresolved time. That's why they won't sit still. One sandal turns slightly towards you. The whispering slipper in your hand shivers and whispers. Don't let them rewrite you. What does that mean? You ask? They're sentient now, the ghost cobbler says softly. When footwear absorbs too many timelines, it begins editing. Editing what? Your walk. Your choices, your memory of your walk. You stare at the sandals. They've been trying to finish their path ever since he took them off, the cobbler adds, nodding to Hades. Why didn't you wear them again? You ask. Because last time I did, Hades says slowly. I remembered a version of myself that chose not to rule. You go still. That version of him, what would he be? A gardener, a historian, a street poet with dirt under his nails and no crown. Historians still argue whether divine artifacts contain the will of their users, Hades says, or whether the artifacts simply grow tired of not being walked properly. The sandals twitch again. The ghost cobblers begin to hum a slow, work song rhythm, threading, stitching, polishing without touching. The whole room pulses with maintenance magic, soft, patient. You feel your own shoes tighten gently, as if sitting up straighter. You'll need these to finish the loop, one cobbler says, pointing to the ceremonial sandals. You hesitate. I'm not divine. You say, neither are regrets. The cobbler replies, you lift the sandals from the box. They're warm, faintly buzzing. As you touch them, the whispering slipper lets out a final sigh and dissolves into a tiny puddle of stardust. It's task done. You look at Hades. He nods once. We wear them together. One last walk. You slip on the sandals. They adjust to your feet with uncanny precision. No discomfort, no loose thread, just purpose. And behind you, the cobblers vanish. No anger, no applause, just the quiet satisfaction of a job finished. Ahead, a new corridor opens, carved above it, glowing with old light. To the final loop. Choose well. The sandals don't carry you forward. They invite you forward. There's a difference. As you and Hades step into the corridor marked to the final loop, your feet move not by command, but by agreement. The sandals hum beneath your soles, not a sound. Exactly, but a vibration that syncs with the beat of your heart. The hallway is bare. No cursed shoes, no cracked scrolls, just clean stone, smoothed by time and worn soft by regret. And silence. True, deep silence. The kind that comes after grief, not before it. The sandals whisper in your bones. Each step remembers. Hades walks beside you in silence for several minutes before he speaks. Do you know why I stored all of it down here? He asks. You shake your head. It wasn't just for record keeping, he says, or sentiment, or hoarding. I kept these shoes because they were the only things that remembered mortals the way they actually walked, not the stories we told after. You glance over. His eyes are darker than usual. Not cruel, just tired. These corridors, they don't run on stone or myth. He continues. They run on choices, missteps, blisters. If a mortal changed their mind on a cliffside in 403 BCE, this place remembers the pressure their heel left behind. That's beautiful, you say quietly. It's a mess, he replies. The corridor begins to curve gently to the right, and you realize the walls are slowly transforming. No longer smooth. They're now lined with tiny shelves. On each shelf, a single sandal, every single one incomplete. Lefts without rights, rights without lefts. Some pristine, others damaged, one or two gently glowing with trapped words. What is this? You ask? Hades stops. This, he says, is the archive of unfinished journeys. Your breath catches. The silence here feels heavier, like the shoes are listening. Somewhere in the corner of your eye, you catch a pair of sandals small, worn down, the leather stitched with what looks like hope. One is tagged. She never made it home, but she tried. You take a deep breath and continue walking. Far ahead, a door becomes visible, not grand, not carved, just simple wood, with a barely visible inscription. Clearance aisle. Hades sighs. This is it. You blink. You put your final memory loop sandals in the clearance aisle. Don't judge me, he says. It was either that or emotional damaged goods. You step into the room. At first glance, it looks like a failed thrift store. Cardboard boxes labeled with chaotic handwriting, possibly divine. Minorly cursed, still smoking, shoes hang from wires, boots sit in a half-empty kiddie pool filled with salt water. And at the very center, beneath a flickering fluorescent torchlight, is a giant wire bin. You know, the kind like in bargain shoe stores, always a little too chaotic. This one is brimming with shoes that don't match, don't belong, and don't know why they're here. And crouched inside the bin is Hades, a version of him, wearing 4 pairs of shoes, one on his feet, one slung around his neck, one in his lap, and one just clutched in his hands. He looks up, startled. Oh, he says, did I miss the exit again? You stare. This version of Hades is frayed around the edges. No crown, no cloak, just a tattered tunic and tired eyes. The real Hades steps forward. Get up, he says. Bargain bin Hades blinks. Which one are you? The one who finally came back. A pause. Then Bargain bin Hades smiles. Softly. Took you long enough? You watch as the two merge, not violently, not magically, just silently. Like fog blending. One body, one memory. And then, only your Hades stands before you again. But now he's barefoot. He looks down. Where are my shoes? He mutters. You hand him the ceremonial sandals. He puts them on. They fit. Exactly. He exhales. Something shifts in the room. The shoes in the bin grow still, and then they start vanishing, one by one, quietly, as if finally allowed to leave. You look down. The sandals you've been wearing, gone. You're barefoot too now, and the floor is warm. A final doorway opens, not labeled, not forced. Just open and waiting. The open doorway leads into light, not blinding, just enough to make you squint and question what time it is, what kind of time it is. Mortal, mythic, dreamed. You and Hades step through together. No fanfare, no choral swell, just the soft slap of your bare feet against stone. The hallway ahead looks familiar, too familiar. The polished floor, the faint smell of candle wax and citrus polish, the echo of your own steps. It takes a moment before you realize you're back at the beginning, the shoe annex. Only now, it's empty. No swinging sandals, no whispering laces, no cursed Crocs, just silence. Woven from endings. Hades glances around. You feel it. You nod. The air has changed. Everything is lighter. Still, he walks to the center of the room and sits down cross-legged, just like before. But this time, there's no frantic tossing, no muttering, just quiet. I remember now, he says, why I started all this. You sit beside him. It wasn't about the shoes, he says softly. It was about what we leave behind, what we carry without meaning to, and what carries us when we think we're alone. You nod again. Behind you, a shelf slowly folds into the wall. Another sighs and dissolves into dust. Then another. One by one, the corridors retract. Not violently, not like a trap closing, more like a room realizing it's no longer needed. A fringe theory from an anonymous Orphic footnote once suggested that labyrinths aren't built. They're remembered, that they form the moment you realize you need somewhere to walk through what you can't yet face. Maybe they're right. You glance down at your bare feet. They're dirty, bruised, but lighter. You've walked through memory, through myth, through misplaced sandals and immortal toe injuries, and now it's done. Hades stands. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. He walks to the far wall, once solid, and passes through it like smoke slipping between bricks. You don't follow. Not yet. You stay for a moment longer, letting the silence settle into your breath, letting the last echoes fade, letting the final pair of sandals in your mind find their match. Then, you walk forward, not toward an exit, not toward an answer, just forward. And the room lets you go. The air is softer now, cooler, like a room that's just been cleaned. The windows cracked open, and the dust finally swept into sunlight. You walk slowly barefoot on the memory of a path that no longer exists. The sandals are gone, the loops, the laces, the cursed insoles, all folded away, like clothes that no longer fit. Your footsteps make no sound now, only breath, only thought. And as the walls begin to blur, soften, dissolve into mist, you realize there is no door ahead, just openness, a gentle kind, the kind you step into, not through. Hades is long gone, or maybe he's always been beside you. A voice not in your ear, but in the rhythm of your walk. A guide made of shoelaces and second chances. You breathe in and let the exhale carry the weight of every looped hallway, every mismatched path. Let it all go. Whatever you carried into this journey, be it sorrow, confusion, the ghost of an unfinished goodbye, it's been softened now, tucked into the archives, filed not to be forgotten, but to be remembered gently. One final step, and the ground beneath you sighs. You are not lost. You were never lost. You simply walked a story most people never find the shoes for. Now, rest. Let the labyrinth fade behind your eyelids, and sleep with quiet feet.